Welcome to the 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nathu. Sometimes I think about all those things I wish I could do, skills I wish I had,
Yeah,
but then I think about all the time it would take to, actually learn them, and it's kind of overwhelming.
it can be for sure.
So today we're looking at the first 20 hours, How to Learn Anything Fast 1 Hour Guide. It's by Josh Kaufman. And it really tackles this idea, right, that to be good at something takes forever.
Yeah, and I think what's really interesting about Kaufman's work, like right from the start, he kind of throws down the gauntlet. This idea that to master anything you need like years and years of dedicated practice.
Right, exactly.
But he says, no, to get good enough to actually do something, to
Yeah.
be, competent, that's way easier and faster than we think.
That's such a relief to hear. I mean, this deep dive is really about giving everyone a super clear look at Kaufman's most practical ideas.
Hmm.
We're kind of condensing it down to the stuff that can help people, actually learn better.
Yeah,
Thanks to the 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nathu.
exactly. The goal here is to give you a clear, concise way to think about getting new skills quickly. And to do that, we're going to focus on the actual steps, the principles that Kaufman lays out.
Okay, so I think one of the biggest, most intimidating things about learning something new is this idea of the 10,000 hour rule. It's become this almost mythical thing, hasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And if we kind of zoom out a bit, a lot of people trace that back to Malcolm Gladwell's work, right? And what Gladwell was really describing was the path to becoming world class, like to be at the very, very top of your field, like Olympic athletes,
Yeah.
famous musicians, that kind of thing.
So that means, if I just want to, say, learn to play a few chords on the guitar or figure out how to use a new software program, I don't need to aim for 10,000 hours.
No, not at all. And this is where Kaufman's argument is so interesting. He's saying you can actually become pretty good at something, what he calls functional competence, like good enough to strum a few songs or use that software to get stuff done in about, are you ready for this? 20 hours.
Wow, 20 hours.
Huh. Focused practice, yeah.
That seems, I don't know, almost too good to be true. But at the same time, it's kind of exciting. I mean, imagine you could learn so many new things if you knew it was only going to take 20 hours.
Exactly. And think about it this way. Right now, think of a skill that you've been wanting to learn, but you haven't started because it seemed like, oh, it's going to take forever.
Yeah.
What Kaufman's saying is it might be way easier than you think.
That's a good point. So it's not just about time, right? There's got to be a method to this. How do you actually make the most of those 20 hours?
Oh, yeah. Kaufman lays out a really clear kind of step-by-step process. And the very first step is super important. Pick something you're genuinely passionate about.
I can see why that would be step one. If you're excited about it, you're going to be way more motivated to stick with it, when it gets tough.
Right, exactly.
Mm,
Passion's like the fuel that powers you through those first 20 hours.
mm.
And then the second step is breaking that skill down into smaller, more manageable, like sub-skills.
So instead of if I want to learn to draw, instead of trying to draw a full portrait right away, I'd start by practicing, say, basic shapes, or shading techniques or something.
Exactly, that's the idea. When you break the skill down into smaller pieces, it doesn't feel as overwhelming.
Yeah.
And you can really focus on mastering those like essential building blocks. And then, it builds momentum.
It does. So step three is interesting. It's about learning just enough to be able to self-correct.
Yes,
That sounds like it's more about practical knowledge instead of getting bogged down in too much theory.
that's exactly it. The idea here is to get enough information to start practicing, but also to be able to tell when you're making mistakes, and most importantly, how to fix them. It's like learning by doing, but with enough guidance to keep you on track.
I like that. Okay, and step four, I think this is something a lot of people struggle with. It's about removing practice barriers. What exactly does Kaufman mean by barriers?
It's anything that makes it hard to actually sit down and focus on learning. So going to be distractions like
Yeah.
social media, right?
Oh, yeah. Huge one.
Doing like a messy workspace,
Yeah.
or just not having like dedicated time in your schedule. It's about creating an environment where you can really focus on practicing and optimizing, like your whole learning ecosystem.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then finally, step five, it's putting it all together, committing to at least 20 hours of focused practice.
And Kaufman really emphasizes that those first few hours are probably going to be the hardest.
Yeah, you're going to be making mistakes, probably feeling frustrated, maybe not seeing results right away.
But pushing through that initial, like, frustration barrier,
Hmm.
that's key to building competence. That's where you develop that foundation.
It makes sense. He also talks about like the difference between passively learning something, just taking in information, versus actively practicing it. So like reading about coding, that's not the same as actually writing code.
Right. No, not at all. Passive learning, like reading books, watching tutorials, that can be good for context. But you really build skills by actively doing the thing you want to learn, making mistakes, figuring it out as you go. It's like turning knowledge into actual ability.
So this active practice, it needs to be like really focused and intentional. You're not just going through the motions.
Right.
Yeah.
It's about consciously putting your attention on the most important parts of the skill.
Okay.
And also, like, actively seeking feedback, figuring out what needs work, and then, minimizing distractions so you can really learn efficiently.
So on top of these 5 steps, Kaufman also gives you like 10 principles of rapid skill acquisition. It's a
Yeah.
lot of
It
principles.
is, but they're super useful, like guidance. I'll list them off real quick.
Okay.
So it's care, focus, define good enough, deconstruct, tools, eliminate barriers, 20 hours, feedback, short bursts, and quantity over perfection.
Okay, so there's like a lot there to unpack. But let's maybe pick a couple that seem particularly important for learning quickly. So, deconstruct, that obviously ties into what we were saying before about breaking the skill down.
Absolutely, and this is really fundamental. By taking a complex skill and turning it into smaller, more manageable parts, you don't get overwhelmed. You can focus your energy on mastering each piece, and it just makes that initial progress so much faster.
And it makes you feel more confident too, right? Like you're accomplishing things, you're making progress.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, and then eliminate barriers. We talked about that a little in the 5 steps, but why is that so important as a principle on its own?
It's because those barriers, those things that get in the way, whether they're like distractions around you or like doubts in your own mind, they really hold you back from focusing and practicing consistently. So by really dealing with those obstacles up front, you're basically clearing the path to learning more easily.
Yeah, setting yourself up for success. Now, Kaufman also talks about 10 principles of like effective learning, which seems to be more about how we actually absorb and remember what we're learning. What are some of the key ideas there?
Okay, so those 10 principles are brains, natural learning, learning by doing, connecting to existing knowledge, understanding versus remembering, solving real problems, spaced repetition, different learning forms, feedback loops, mental models, and growth mindset.
Okay, so spaced repetition, I've heard about that before. It's like a technique people use for memorization, right? How does that fit into rapid skill acquisition?
So those first 20 hours, they're all about getting to a point where you can do the thing, right?
Hmm.
But spaced repetition is about making that learning last. So you revisit concepts, you practice skills, but you do it at increasing intervals, and this helps to strengthen those connections in your brain, making it easier to remember things long term.
It's like solidifying what you learned in those first 20 hours.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, and learning by doing, that really goes back to what we were talking about before about active practice, right?
Oh, absolutely. The way our brains learn best is through actually doing stuff. So when you actually perform the skill, you're not just passively taking in information, you're building those neural pathways, developing muscle memory. You're really embodying the skill.
It's interesting how these two sets of principles, one's focused on learning fast and the other is about making sure that learning is effective and stays with you. They kind of work together.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They complement each other really well. Like the rapid acquisition principles are about getting you started quickly, getting your foot in the door, and then the effective learning principles are about making sure that the stuff you learn actually sticks and that you can build on it over time.
Now, does Kaufman give any like real world examples of people using this approach successfully?
So while the book doesn't get into tons of detail about like specific famous people,
Yep.
Kaufman actually took on several different learning projects himself.
Okay.
He tried to learn yoga, the game of Go, Ruby programming, touch typing, and even how to play the ukulele.
Wow, that's a pretty diverse set of skills.
It is. And he
Yeah.
was using those as real practical demonstrations of his framework. And he wanted to show how adaptable it is, how it can work in all sorts of different areas. Like, for example, with the ukulele, he focused on just learning a few key chords that would let him play lots of different songs. And he can do that pretty quickly.
So, thinking about our listeners, a lot of them are leaders, entrepreneurs. How can they use these ideas to improve their own professional development?
Well, I think the implications are huge. This whole idea of rapid skill acquisition, it's a super powerful tool for staying agile, staying ahead of the curve. If you know you can get good enough at something new relatively quickly, it makes you way more likely to take on new challenges, try new things without feeling like, oh, it's going to take me years to learn this.
So, like, if a business leader realizes, hey, I need to understand data analytics, they could use these principles to get a good basic understanding without feeling like they have to become, like, a data scientist overnight.
Yeah, exactly. It's about like strategically figuring out which skills will give you the biggest bang for your buck and then focusing your learning time on those. And the idea of breaking things down, that can apply to like complex business problems too, right?
Right.
Taking a big, messy problem and breaking it down into smaller, more manageable pieces that you can analyze and take action on.
And I'm guessing the part about optimizing your resources and getting rid of distractions, that's super relevant for busy professionals too, people who are always short on time.
Oh, absolutely. It's about being really intentional about what you learn and how you learn it. Picking the best resources, carving out dedicated time for learning, even when you're super busy. And remember how Kaufman talks about the initial discomfort of learning?
Yeah.
Well, professionals need to embrace that too. Like that initial learning curve, that's just part of growing. It's part of getting better.
So it sounds like the main takeaway is that you don't have to be afraid to try new things. Learning new skills is way more achievable than a lot of people think.
Mm.
And it doesn't have to take forever, especially if you're strategic about it and you really focus your efforts.
Right, exactly. It's about shifting your mindset from like, oh, mastery takes forever to, hey, I can get good enough at this in a reasonable amount of time. And the first 20 hours, which is summarized so well by the 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nathu, it really gives you a roadmap for getting there.
Absolutely. It's about making the most of those first 20 hours. And that's something we're really passionate about here at the 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nathu, bringing people these kinds of like practical, actionable insights.
Yeah, and I think the most empowering thing about all this is that it means learning isn't just this passive thing. It's not just for specialists. It's an active skill, and anyone can develop it and use it to learn all sorts of cool things.
It puts you in control of your own learning. And if you want to find more concise, impactful summaries of important business books, personal development books, you know where to go.
Yeah.
The 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nathu.
So think about this. What's one skill that you've been wanting to learn? And how could you apply even just the first 2 or 3 steps of Kaufman's process to actually get started, maybe in the next week?
That's a great question. That's something to really think about. Thank you all for joining us today. And if you want to dive deeper, you can buy the book at the 1 Hour Guide website. We'll see you next time.